Well, hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this session. My name is Ryan. I'm from the Future Students team here at the University of Newcastle, and I would like to welcome you to this session. We hope to provide you with lots of information that will benefit you on your journey to university. So please feel free to pick our brains through the question and answer function regarding this. So tonight we're joined by a number of staff members here at the University of Newcastle who have extensive knowledge on basically coming to university, getting into university, and all of the facts that you need to know about making the transition to university. So I'd like to introduce our panel. First off, we have Kim Austin, and she is from our admissions team. So Kim, if you want to say hi, give us a wave.
Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kim. Thanks for joining us. Next, we have Sam Doherty, and he is from admissions as well. Sam, if you want to say hi, give us a wave.
Hey, everyone. Glad to be here.
Beautiful. Thanks, Sam. Finally, we have Nick, and Nick is a current student from Mechanical Engineering and Business, and he also is a student who transitioned from TAFE. So, Nick, if you want to say hi and give us a wave, but also, do you want to tell us a little bit about your journey to university?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Nick. I study a double degree in mechanical engineering and business. As Ryan said, I came from TAFE as well, as many of you guys did. Basically, my journey was I came from high school in Singleton. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I ended up doing a trade. Of course, as a part of my trade, I got a certificate 3, and I actually got about 6 or 7 years into my trade and realised that I wanted a bit more in terms of education. I wasn't quite done learning yet. So I ended up enrolling in a Bachelor of Business because I didn't quite have the ATAR with my certificate 3 to get straight into engineering, which is what I really wanted to study. It turns out it was one of the best things I did because I actually love the dichotomy between engineering and business. They're quite different things, but they interact quite heavily with one another. So yeah, basically, once I started working for the university, I worked and studied full-time simultaneously for about 2 years until I just basically needed to sleep for about 3 months. But what I ended up doing was actually in 2018 decided that I was going to drop back and start working part-time to try and focus on the later years of my degree. That didn't work either. I actually ended up getting a internship in a mining company and ended up working for them for a year, basically semi-full-time as well. And then as soon as that finished, I actually got a job working for infrastructure and facility services at UON. So I've been doing that for all this year. And I'm finally set to finish things up next year. So, yeah, it's been a bit of a long journey, but I'm happy to talk through more of it with you a bit later on.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that, Nick. And guys, yes, please feel free to pick Nick's brain on how he's found it, but also please feel free to ask us any questions that you wish to know more about. So first of all, before we actually start to get stuck into tonight's presentation and all of the details, we would like to pay an acknowledgement of country, and we would like to pay our respects to the Awabakal people on which our Callaghan campus stands, and we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. So just kicking off, just before we get in as well, just some general housekeeping webinar etiquette. So normally we would love to be doing this session face-to-face, but unfortunately due to the current situation, we have to adopt to the digital age. So I'm sure that there's many of you in the audience that have basically adapted to the digital age with us. But essentially, if you have not used Zoom before, you will find a Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. It's a speech bubble. So basically, if you do have any questions throughout the course of tonight's webinar, please feel free to pop those questions into there. And how that question will be answered will be one of 2 ways. We will either send you a direct message that responds to your question immediately, or we will answer your question live at the end of the session. So we will be allotting some time at the end of tonight's session specifically for question and answers. So I must encourage, please don't be shy. If there's anything you want to know or there's anything in particular that we haven't covered, please feel free to ask. No such thing as a silly question. Also, it's important to remember as well is with tonight's recording, you will get a copy of that. So, so for those of you that may have people that you know that really wanted to attend but couldn't, you will receive a link that will have the recording included into that. So without any further ado, I will now hand over to Sam to take us through the admissions component. Over to you, Sam.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, so as Nick said, there's many different pathways into university. There seems to be a bit of a common misconception out there that you sort of finish high school, you go straight into university, you finish university, you might do some more study or you go into the workforce. But roughly, give or take, about 50% of our students each year who start a degree with us aren't actually coming from high school. They're what we call a non-school leaver applicant. So they could be coming from another university, or quite often they're coming into university after having completed some TAFE studies, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. We've got a range of ways that you can use your TAFE studies to get into degrees, and that basically depends on the type of TAFE study that you've completed. So typically that's either a Certificate 3, a Certificate 4, a diploma, or an advanced diploma. Now, one of the most straightforward ways that you can use your TAFE program to get into a university degree is through what's called our TAFE Guaranteed Entry Scheme. So what this means is that if you've completed a qualification above a Certificate 3, so it could be a Cert 4, diploma, advanced diploma, you are guaranteed admission into a whole stack of different degree programs here at the university. So there's more than 40 that this applies to. It doesn't have to be in the same area that you've done your previous studies. So you may have done a Certificate 4 in information technology. You'll still be able to get into, for example, the Bachelor of Business. So the areas of study don't have to align there. So that's one way if you do have the Cert 4 diploma or advanced diploma. If we can just jump onto the next slide. This is the list of degrees that you can get into. It's quite small there because there are so many, but it crosses across all of our faculties, all of our different study areas. There's a whole range of different things that you can get straight into. Just will point out one thing is that for the Bachelor of Music and the Bachelor of Music, Bachelor of Arts, along with your TAFE qualification, you still also need to sit a music audition as well. And that's not specific to TAFE students, that's regardless of what background you're coming from. Okay, so if you haven't done the Certificate 4 or above, but you've done a Cert 3, you can still be, yep, that's the one. You can still get into a whole stack of different programs. So your qualification at TAFE, in this instance a Cert 3, gives you what's called an admission rank. And that can be loosely sort of considered the same as an ATAR that a student gets at the end of high school. So it gives you a number which we can use to determine your eligibility into a range of programs. The rank that you get from a Certificate 3 is basically equivalent to an ATAR of 67. So at that 67 will get you into most of these degrees. So if you haven't quite gone on to the Cert 4, there's still a whole stack of degrees that you can be considered for. Thanks, Ryan. Okay, so along with, and this is probably one big distinction between coming straight from high school into university as opposed to moving from TAFE into university. TAFE qualifications at the diploma level or above usually can be used for what's called credit into degrees. So this is where we look at what you studied in your diploma and match it up to what we teach in our university degrees. And we can kind of see that you've covered some of the content of a few of our subjects, and those will be credited to you. So you get some recognition for the study that you've already done. At the website, which is on the screen there, just jump back one, yep. There's what's called a transfer catalogue. So you can go in and put in the qualification that you've done, say the Bachelor of the Advanced Diploma of Business is the example up on the screen. And you can see that we give 70 units of credit towards our Bachelor of Business program. So it's almost a full year for that Advanced Diploma qualification. So there's those agreements where there's a defined pathway from a particular TAFE qualification into a degree. But even if your diploma is not related to the degree that you're going to study, you can still apply for credit, and you might get a few less. So you might get some electives credited or some other subjects within the degree. So it's very much worth putting in a credit application. Thanks, Ryan. Okay, so how to actually apply to get into university? It's a bit more straightforward than it seems, really. There's a website or an organisation called the Universities Admission Centre, or UAC, and that's where you submit your application. Basically, you log on, you put in your personal details, your address, your phone number, all of those things, and you list the qualifications that you've done. And that will obviously, pardon me, include your TAFE qualifications. You then list the degrees that you want to apply for, and you can order 5. That's called your preferences. You can list 5 degrees that you want to be considered for. You don't have to list all 5, but you can list up to 5. So if you have done a Cert 4 and the degree that you want to do is, say, the Bachelor of Business, so it's a guaranteed admission program, you only need to list that one preference because you know that you're going to get into that. But if you're a little bit unsure, or you want to be considered for a few degrees, then you can list multiple degrees on your preferences. In terms of ordering the degrees that you want to be considered for, it should be treated like a wish list. So your top #1 preference is the degree that you really want to study at university. And then the lower preferences are kind of backups. So I think Nick mentioned early on that he was really interested in studying engineering. So that would have been Nick's #1 preference. His backup degree was the Bachelor of Business. So when it came to determining whether he was eligible, didn't quite make the cutoff for engineering. So skipped his first preference, had a look at his second preference and said, yep, great, Nick's eligible for the Bachelor of Business. So he received an offer to commence that degree. In terms of changing your preferences, you can actually shuffle them around a little bit. But my strong advice is to get in touch with the university, have a look around the website, reach out to us through the contact details that we'll provide at the end, and determine what you want to study before you put your application in. Then lock in that top preference as your dream degree, and that shouldn't need to change. You know what you want to study, and then put a couple of backups down the bottom. Thanks, Ryan. So that's pretty much it from my part. But yeah, please, if you've got any questions at all, throw them up and we'll answer those.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sam. So there is a lot of information regarding admissions, and there's lots of, every situation is very different depending on your current situation of learning. So please feel free to ask those questions if you need to. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to cover some of the just some of the factual things about coming to university, some information about university as a student, some opportunities, and we'll get into it. So basically, this first question: why should you go to uni? There's quite a number of different reasons why you would consider going to university. Typically, there are some career professions out there that do offer better jobs and better pay, so that do require a university qualification. So that's one of the obvious ones, but it's not the only one. The next one is, of course, to follow your interests, something that you're really passionate about and something that you really want to study. So basically, that may be something that you've already discovered through your TAFE learning, that you're particularly interested in an area of interest and you really want to pursue that at university. That's fantastic. Go global. This is quite an interesting one at this point in time, because obviously we can't at the moment, but hopefully one day soon, students can actually go global again once things start to settle down. Feel prepared to work. So this is something that we will touch on a little bit later, but the University of Newcastle really does like to prepare their students for the future of work. So whether that be through the modes of work integrated learning, whether that be through practical experiences and labs, we really would like our students to be as prepared for work as possible to allow that seamless transition between study and working once you've finished. And also, university is incredibly flexible as well. There are some people out there still that do think that university, if you're a full-time student, you're there 9 to 5, 5 days a week, and any student will tell you that is simply not the case. You can actually fit university around your interests and around your life and around your situation. So there's lots of flexibility in there to allow that. So first of all, across the globe, so what we really do like to encourage, as I said, we have a number of institution partners across the globe, over 100, and we're really enthusiastic about our students actually seeing a part of the world, experiencing another culture, doing a different way of learning in another country. It's a very popular thing. Obviously, like I said, at the moment, there's not a lot of it going on. There's not any at all, in fact, but hopefully one day soon we can get back to that. Life ready graduates. So this is an important one, and this is something that we did touch on just a few moments ago. So like I said, the University of Newcastle is very big on what we call work integrated learning. So some specific examples are nursing is a really prominent example. So when you do a nursing degree here at the University of Newcastle, students typically do minimum 800 hours of work placement before they actually get out into the profession. It's the same can be said for teaching. So teaching students have to do multiple different pracs within schools before they're allowed to teach. Engineering, and Nick may touch on this a little bit as well, you have to actually do a minimum of 12 weeks work placement before you graduate. And that's just a couple of examples. There's lots of examples that you do in your studies. So for instance, if you're doing those practical hands-on subjects like the sciences, medical and health, engineering, if you're doing those particular areas, you will find that you will have a lot of hands-on experience while you're at university. And like I said, the importance of doing this is so that you go to uni, you get the skills, those hands-on skills, and that enables you to have a seamless transition from university into the workforce. So it's a work integrated learning, and preparing our graduates is something that we're very passionate about. So these are some areas that you can study at the University of Newcastle. So we call these study areas, and there's 12 of them. So we do offer over 100 undergraduate degrees that you can go into. So we're not going to spend the rest of the session breaking all of those down. Like I said, you've probably already got a bit of an idea on where you want to go with your interests, but we do offer a wide number of degrees. We are indeed a very, very comprehensive university. So that's a little bit from me. I'm now going to hand over to Nick, and Nick is going to talk about the support and services on offer. Take it away, Nick.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ryan. So something to remember when you start at uni is that you're never alone. There's always an avenue you can reach out to. I'll touch on the ones specific to me in here, and we'll discuss those in a bit more detail. So the first one you can see there is Student Information Hubs. So the good thing about those is usually the people that run those are students themselves or ex-students. So they're always a wealth of information, and often they're the ones also manning the helpline when you call the university. The first people you talk to will actually be students themselves before you get truncated through. On-campus security. So my office is actually in the security office as well. So I guarantee you there's a lot of security walking around, keeping everybody safe. They're all very friendly people, get a lot of exercise on their bikes around the paths here. The third one there, careers guidance and advice. So that's one that I used fairly heavily myself. So the Career Hub actually got me a start in Student Central. So I was one of those phone answerers for a good year. And from there, I actually branched out and got another 3 casual jobs through the university as well. One of them, of course, is this student ambassador position that I've been doing now for a couple of years. And they actually also got me my job in IFS. As well as that, the career help that you can get in terms of boosting up your resume, providing them with basically an outline of what you want to say, and then they'll help you mold that to an appropriate application as such. Student mentors. So I haven't got a lot of experience with that one, so someone else can feel free to jump in with that if they have a story about it. But student mentoring is something that's available to you. Free legal advice, similarly. We do have a free legal centre where you can go and ask questions, whether you're having disputes about rentals or anything like that, even just any form of legal issues, actually, you can have a chat to them. Academic program advisors. So as you go through your degree, you may find yourself in a position similar to me where you're degree sort of gets spread out over a number of years and you don't stick typically to the path. That's something that I did when I dropped back from studying full-time to part-time. And academic program advisors essentially help you come up with a plan to put all that back into place and sort of get a plan for how you're going to continue on and graduate your own way, really. Like Ryan touched on earlier, the flexibility of university is amazing. So when I realised that I couldn't drop back to working part-time because I just enjoyed working too much, that's when I sort of looked at my program and said, okay, how can I break this up to be a bit more manageable given a full-time workload in a lot of cases. And yeah, that's been fantastic. So I've had academic program advisors help me with that several times. Student progress advisors, similar vein. Disability support, 7 state-of-the-art libraries. So anything you need to research. And a fun fact about those is most of those are actually open to the public as well. So if you've got any queries about that, you can come in and ask. Health and welfare advisors. So if you have any questions or queries or you need to see a GP or anything like that, we've got some processes like that on campus, and chaplaincy services and prayer facilities. So probably a fun fact about that is there's also signatories and stuff like that in chaplaincy. So they're all able to sign off on like your international student documents and things like that. And yeah, so I'll get you to skip over the next one there. All right.
Yeah, just before we move on as well, the student mentoring that Nick, you haven't had a lot of experience with, but it's a fantastic initiative as well that's done here at the University of Newcastle, where if you're transitioning to university and you're not quite sure about those first couple of weeks, we do have student mentors that can basically assist you. And these are often students that have been at the university for a number of years, and they basically volunteer their time to assist those students that have just come in. So whether that be like basically showing them the ropes on how classes work, showing them the facilities and explaining how they work, it's a fantastic program to basically be a part of if you're feeling really unsure about university. Yeah, over to you, Nick.
Thanks for that, Ryan. I appreciate your input.
No worries.
So Waller Tucker Institute. Basically, the Waller Tucker Institute is a unique institution in the University of Newcastle, and their primary function is to assist and aid Indigenous students in getting the best thing they can out of higher education. So the Waller Tucker Institute is an all-Indigenous staff and represents and supports Indigenous students studying at the University of Newcastle. Waller Tucker is guided by the teachings of elders and cultural mentors who are on site there, and their wisdom is often is respected and honoured among the entire staff cohort. I know we deal with them quite heavily in IFS in terms of showing them designs and plans and things and making sure they're happy with how that represents an Indigenous cultural perspective. Yeah. Okay, so how do you pay for university? So like from my perspective, I go through the HECS and fee help strain of things. I know there's a lot of other avenues for paying your university, including scholarships. Some of them, or most of them, won't actually cover your entire tuition, but they definitely help with things like living expenses, things like that. And I think Ryan's going to cover up on some of those in a second. Living expenses, if you're like myself and as a tradesman, you got used to a certain lifestyle, you actually don't want to step back into the student threshold of life as such. But so if you want to work, say full-time or something like that on the side, that's also a possibility, as I mentioned, the flexibility there. So on campus, we also have a lot of living opportunities. So we have on-campus living arrangements and all that sort of stuff can be found on the website. And as mentioned there, apply to live on campus from October. Yeah, I think that just about covers it from my perspective on that one, Ron.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that, Nick. Great to have your insights on that one. So what I'm going to talk about now is applying for scholarships. And so you may have heard scholarships. There may be some scholarships that you do have your eye on. Before I start talking about scholarships, is what I really would suggest is jumping onto the website and just go into the search bar, type in scholarships. it's the first page, and you'll come up with a whole list of all the scholarships that we offer. And the scholarships exist because basically the university does have money allocated there that they give back to students in the form of these scholarships to support them with their studies. So with that being said, there is a wide range of different studies that do exist, and they exist on the basis of financial disadvantage, disability, academic performance previously. The criteria are simply, there's all different sorts of ones in there that you can have a look at. And what's really, really good to know about applying for scholarships now is basically you can set up a profile to apply for scholarships, and you populate this profile with key information about yourself and about your background. And then what will happen is it will recommend what scholarships you're eligible to apply for. And definitely apply for all the scholarships that you are eligible for. That's probably one of the most important pieces of information. So definitely, as I said, feel free to check all of those out on our website. You can filter them by what you study, you can filter them by faculty, you can filter them by what year you're in. So please definitely take a look at that. And again, please feel free to ask any questions about scholarships if you do think of them. I'm going to highlight some of the key scholarships now. So one of our flagship scholarships is what's called the Ma and Morley Scholarship Program. So this scholarship was basically put into place by entrepreneur Jack Ma, who actually did some study here at the University of Newcastle a number of years ago. And he came back to the university a few years ago and basically put $20 million into the university in the form of scholarships. So this scholarship has particular values attached to it. So you can see there on the screen, peace, demilitarization and cultural respect, equity and justice, ethics in entrepreneurship and workers' rights, and environmental sustainability, biodiversity and conservation. So it's a very value-based scholarship, and it's something that you do have to apply for. And in your application, you do have to address those values and how you fit into that. So there's a range of different there's a range of different criteria for this scholarship that you can see there on the screen. You can apply for this scholarship on the basis of if you're Indigenous. You can apply for if you've suffered an educational disadvantage previously. You can apply for if you've had academic excellence. And the last one there is immersion, but that's for students that are already at university. So the next two scholarships, so these are particular scholarships that were put in place. The first one that you see there on the screen, Equity Scholarship Scheme at the University of Newcastle. So this is particularly for those students that have experienced financial difficulty or are experiencing financial difficulty. And you can see on the screen there that there's a number of different reasons and criteria that basically this does apply to. And then the next one as well, it's a little bit similar, but it's the Shaping Futures Scholarship. And so basically this one, it's the aim of helping those students that are most in need. So they are a little bit similar, and you can see the criteria on how you can apply for those scholarships there on the screen, but definitely something to consider because as Nick pointed out, every little bit of money when you are commencing university study definitely does help. So could be something to definitely look into. I'll hand over to Nick, who's going to talk a little bit about our preparatory program and our bridging courses. Over to you, Nick.
Yeah, thank you. So the UPP, the University Preparation Program, sorry, not P, too many Ps, is a free program aimed at basically getting you ready to undertake tertiary education. So you might be coming in and like me, you weren't ready to jump straight into engineering level mathematics, or you weren't ready to jump into academic writing as such at the level that's expected. And this is a new program this year that basically helps you tailor what you need to your specific degree that you've chosen. So this kicks off in the weeks leading up to the commencement of your new degree. And it's basically, as I said, just aimed at getting you ready for it. I'd recommend looking into that a bit more. Yeah.
Sorry to just jump in here for Nick. Now we've just had a couple of questions that have come through our chat. Please, if you can put these questions through the question and answer feature, that would be wonderful. It's just coming into a chat, and it would be great if they can go into the question and answer feature, which you can see at the bottom of your screen. Thanks.
All right, cool. Now we might jump to the next one. Yep. NU Prep, basically bridging and refresher courses, as I mentioned, these are essentially a subcategory of the previous university preparation program. You can choose these individually if you think you're lacking in a specific area and you don't think you need to do an entire preparation program. Say you just want to brush up on your academic writing skills and you think your maths up to standard, you could undertake one of these NU prep courses to get up to speed with that. Might jump to the next one, Ryan. Yeah, so as mentioned here, you've got a lot of these degree-specific academic, mathematics, science, and computing skill prep courses that you could run into. Again, I'd recommend jumping on the website and having a look through these and seeing if there's any that you feel particularly lacking in confidence. I know for me, it was mathematics worried me quite a bit, but I basically started from fractions and worked my way up to advanced calculus that I'm doing now. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. So yeah, I'd recommend definitely jumping on. You've got 15 to 20 hours over the week prior. That's the difference with these prep courses, is that you basically have a crash course the week before you start. So when you're going into week one, you're all studied up and ready to go. All right, and there's also online prep courses you can undertake. So these are open to anyone. It's a bit of a lesser list there, but there's some big ones that are very important, such as the academic reading and writing. So you're going to run into that basically in any degree that you undertake. And of course, if you're doing anything in STEM, such as myself, you've got maths for engineering, maths for science, and numeracy and stuff like that. That's going to be common in all of your STEM degrees as well, that you should brush up on and make sure you're confident in when you get to week one.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Nick. Great to have your input on those things. So now what we're going to do is basically I'm going to tell you about a new feature that's come on board our university website just this year, which is called Ask a Student. And the platform is awesome. Basically what it is, you can jump on using this at any time, and you can directly speak to current university students that may be doing your particular degree of interest. So you can actually pick their brains. You can ask them all sorts of questions about what's first year like, what are the subjects like, what's the workload like, etc. What you will see when you do log into this platform, you will see a profile, and then basically you can see what they study, you can see a bit about the student, and then you can actually initiate a chat. And the students on there, they're more than happy to assist anyone that's looking at coming to university. They're a great bunch of students. And so it's definitely worth checking out if you do come away from tonight's webinar just with some additional questions. And basically you can get to that page just by going to our website and typing in Ask a Student. And there's also another platform that we do have, which is called Ask an Academic, which is the same setup, but basically it's with academics that actually teach into programs rather than students. And so again, that's another really handy resource to basically have just in case you would like to know more specifics from the academic point of view. So now what we're going to do, we've had the question and answers, we've had the questions coming throughout the course of the webinar, which has been great. So myself and our lovely panel, we're going to address those questions now. So again, if you do have any questions that you would like answered or you'd like to know a little bit more about, please feel free to put them in the question and answer function. So we'll get started now with our first one, and it's probably a really good one for you, Sam. And I can answer it as well, but Sam, if you want to chime in, when would I receive an offer? Do I wait until the December round?
Yep, no worries. So the reference there to rounds is an offer round. And basically we release offers of admission to successful applicants pretty much every 2 weeks. Most degrees, the sooner you apply, you'll be considered for the next round and you'll receive your offer of admission. So if you apply now, you'd probably get your offer on the 12th of November, which is the next round. There are certain programs from our Faculty of Health and Medicine where no offers are released until December. And that's basically because there's limited places and we can't give offers out now to you guys who've completed TAFE because there might not be places left for the people who don't get their HSC results till later in the year. So everybody who's applying for those is considered at the same time in December. So the short answer is most programs, the sooner you apply, the sooner you'll get your offer, apart from Faculty of Health and Medicine programs, and that's in December, on the 23rd of December.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Sam. Our next question, and Nick, this is probably a really good one for you, actually. How does TAFE workload compare to uni?
Okay, so it's a bit of an interesting question. So for me personally, when I did TAFE, I did it as a part of a trade. So I actually did block release for 3 days every 3 weeks. So it was an interesting time because a lot of a trade is on the job learning, and then it's backed up by the skills you learn at TAFE. So for me, my TAFE experience is probably a lot of quite different to many of our TAFE applicants that have done just a straight up advanced diploma or something like that. But what I can say as a part of the university's studies for me was that I was shocked by how flexible it was, more or less. So if I, had an event coming up and I couldn't attend class for a week or two, it didn't really matter because often I found that it was recorded, and that really helped me as well when I was undertaking working full time as well during my trade, was that I could work 5 days a week, maybe take half a day off to attend a compulsory class, but I also had the option there to catch up on my lectures online. Of course, I'd recommend face-to-face learning to anyone. You definitely take more in. But yeah, for me, I would say comparably, different ball game, but similar skills transition between them. So as long as you put the effort in, make sure you're on top of your coursework, it's very manageable. And they say 10 hours per subject per week. So 120 hours per subject over the 12-week period of semester. But for me, I'd say the most I've ever really put in is probably 6 or 7. And that would be on a big week. So, it's customizable and it really depends what you want to get out of it. So you could definitely spend 12, 15 hours a week studying for each course, but what you get out of that, I think in the end is going to be diminishing returns, but you'll definitely get your HDs and that sort of thing that you want. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks for that, Nick. And I'd also like to just add on there, I loved the way that you mentioned I think you mentioned the word in there that it's flexible, and it's completely true. So basically, you can choose the number of courses that you want to study per semester. So we consider full-time study to be 30 units or 40 units, and roughly 10 units is equal to a course. So 3 to 4 courses roughly per semester is considered full-time study, whereas 1 to 2 subjects or 10 to 20 units is considered part-time study. So the good news is there as well is you can actually, when you do essentially start university and you feel that you have the workload's a bit too hectic, we do have what's called a census period. And so basically it's the first 4 weeks of the semester, and you can basically drop a course within that 4-week period and not be financially penalised for that. So essentially, you don't pay for the course. So always bear in mind that it is very flexible. So our next question is, how do we find out about fees? I'm wanting to get into the Bachelor of Social Work if offered. Thanks.
I might take that one.
Thanks, Sam.
Yep, so it looks like that one's from Lisa. Couple of quick ways. Just jump onto the uni site and type fees, and it'll be the first sort of area that comes up. Or you can email fees@newcastle.edu.au and we'll give you some more information. But just broadly, the tuition costs for an undergraduate degree are typically what's called Commonwealth supported, and this applies to 99% of domestic applicants. So the student yourself will pay part of the tuition cost, and the Commonwealth government pays the remainder of that cost as their sort of contribution. Now, when I say you as the student pays, you don't actually pay that up front each semester. So you can access what's called a HEX help loan. So that defers the cost of your part of the tuition costs, goes over to the tax office. And then the more you earn, once you finish your degree and start working, the more you earn, the more you'll pay back each week or each fortnight. It's basically like additional tax that's taken out of your pay. Now, from memory, that kicks in at around about 40-something $1,000 per annum. You'll start paying it back, and then it's incremental. The more you earn, the higher the rate of repayment. But there is essentially no upfront payment required to study at the university.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for that, Sam. The next question that we do have, and it again comes back to flexibility, is how much flexibility is there in which days you're on campus? Say you work a weekday job part-time, could you choose your days around it all? I'm more than happy to answer that question, but Nick, please feel free to jump in, or Kim or Sam, please feel free to jump in. So basically, with the current modes of learning, I guess, the common modes of learning at university are lectures, which are often recorded and put onto our learning platform called Blackboard. So you can basically access those recordings to listen back to them, to rewatch them. So those lectures generally tend to be at fixed times. It really does depend on what course you do. So some courses may offer 2 lectures per week, but most of the time they'll offer 1 lecture a week, and that tends to be at a fixed time. But where you do have a little bit of flexibility is if you're doing a subject that has labs involved, for instance, you can actually pick the certain times that work for you and work around your schedule to attend those labs. And the same thing actually applies to tutorials as well. So tutorials are basically the classroom focused exercises. They're basically in a classroom, they're a bit smaller. So you can actually have a bit more consideration with time on when to fit those in your schedule as well. So there is ways to basically make it work. And yeah, it is quite flexible. So I hope that does help. And that appears to be all the questions that we have for now. Is there anything else that someone would like to add?
Yeah, Ryan, I'm just going to pick out those 2 questions that came through the chat channel as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
So one of them, this is an interesting question. I haven't come across this one before. Will the possibility of entering university get reduced because of criminal records? Absolutely not. We won't even ask you about it or look for it. And the other one is for those who have English as their second language and want to study at university, do they need to sit an IELTS test? Typically, if you haven't done, if English isn't your first language and you haven't done study in an English-speaking country in university or high school previously, then yes, you will need to sit an English test. And there's another question that has just come up as well from Lisa.
Yep. Do
you get into your first choice most times? Thanks. I guess you're talking about preferences here and what you apply for, Lisa. If your top preference is one of those guaranteed admission programs and you've done a TAFE qualification cert 4 or above, yes, absolutely, you will get into that first preference 100% of the time. If it's not a guaranteed admission program, it's competitive entry. So we look at everybody, all of the applicants, and the limited places are awarded to the top ranked applicants. So the better you've done in your previous studies, the higher you are on that list of applicants, and you're more likely to get an offer. If you don't get your first choice though, and I think Nick might have alluded to this previously as well, it's always good to have a backup and a second choice plan. Once you've started something, there's 2 ways it can go. You might actually really enjoy the degree that was originally your backup and want to stick with that. The other option is that you can apply after you've done a semester of that first degree to transfer into something different. And we look at how well you've done in the initial part of your first degree to determine whether you can switch over. It's absolutely common these days for students to start in one thing, change their mind, move on to something different, perhaps even do that again before they actually finish their qualification. So your dream degree is what is your end goal. There's a range of different ways that you can get to that.
Wonderful.
I think
Thanks.
that's all the questions.
That's all the questions. Thank you very much for that, Sam. Just before we finish up, I really would like to thank Kim, I'd like to thank Nick, and I'd like to thank yourself, Sam, for taking the time out to assist with this session. We really appreciate it. And certainly for you guys that have tuned in, we hope that you've taken away some valuable information about coming to university. And the next slide, sorry. The next slide, basically, we have all of our social media channels here. If you do have any questions or concerns after tonight's webinar, please feel free to reach out on those platforms. We're more than happy to support students coming into the university, and there's no such thing as a silly question. But just before we go, we have had one more question that has come through. The question is, hi, can I go to study the master degree course of the social worker or social science by diploma of CS in TAFE?
I'll take that one. Yeah, so tonight's been primarily about undergraduate degrees, so a Bachelor in Business, a Bachelor of Science, those initial degrees. We do also offer a range of postgraduate qualifications, so that's a Master in something, a Master in Business, whatever it might be. And there are, typically, students will go from an undergraduate degree into a master's degree, but there are pathways into some of those postgraduate qualifications if you've got TAFE plus some relevant work experience as well. So all of the contact information that's on the screen at the moment, if you reach out to any of those channels, you'll be able to get some information on pathways into postgraduate qualifications as well.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Sam. And thank you very much to everyone on the panel. And also, just a reminder that we have recorded this session as well, and it will be shared with all who have registered for the session. So once again, thank you for joining in. We hope you've learned something about our university. We hope you're excited to start studying with us, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night, everyone.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.